Alright, sorry for the delay, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Just one moment. Working out a camera glitch. Hello? There we go. There we are. Alrighty. Alright. Sorry for the delay, folks. Hopefully you guys can see me okay. Today is going to be kind of a crazy day because there's a lot to cover. I promised Reckless Israel from Music Producers Alliance, hopefully you're watching, buddy, that I would cover some vocal production techniques today. But I want to kind of go, it's kind of like a crash course because there's so much to go into vocal productions. Everything from your room that you're in to mic, type of mic that you're using, mic placement. I'm going to focus more on the performance and trying to just give you guys the biggest bang for your buck. Like, hey, here's the setup I've got. I don't want to have to go buy new gear or anything like that, or spend, tons of money hiring a commercial studio just to go in and record vocals. That is an option, but I want to give you guys the best bang for your buck in terms of like what you can do right now with the equipment you already have. So if you don't mind, right now, give me a moment because I was just troubleshooting my setup here. I've got a couple of different mics. So give me one moment here. Let me see if I can tilt this down. Here is it might be hard to see. I'm using a Rode shotgun mic. This is an NTG3. And you can get like a whole kit and caboodle, something like this with like a shock mount windscreen, which is like a dead cat. That goes for me about $1,000 or so, retail. They might be a little less now. I think they're on like NTG5 or something like that. They've kind of gone through a few iterations. The reason I like this one is because it's RF shielded. So if you're on productions and things like that, if you're running to stuff like this, and you can kind of tell I've got so this is there it is, a little germanium preamp, kind of like gain lifter sort of thing. And they go for about maybe 90, 100 bucks. This one is from Triton Audio. There's a few out there. The most popular one is probably like the CL1 Cloud Lifter, which is probably the most prominent one out there. You probably spend about the same, maybe 150 to 200 bucks. They also have 4-channel versions and like a rack mount thing. So if you have multiple mics and you want to be able to, doing a podcast setup, for example, that's another good thing to have. The other thing that I have next to me here, and we're going to kind of like A-B in between those two, is this guy here. It's an Audio-Technica large diaphragm condenser microphone. So this guy I bought for maybe about 200 bucks way back in 2004. So in 2004, this is when I started getting into pro audio. I was working at Guitar Center for a little while by 2006, and was going to recording art school. And, I already had probably 300 plus, recordings under my belt. And so that was, I was a lot of practice with just recording people's vocals and things like that. And it just kind of spiraled out from there. I started getting into mixing and multimedia production. So I've got 3 different mic flavors for you here. Whether you've got something like this, which is the Shure SM57, it's a dynamic mic. These guys go for about 100 bucks new. You could probably get them for half that used, depending on where you go, like eBay or Reverb or something like that. There's no reason you can't get good quality vocals out of it. It's more about your mic technique and where you're putting it in the room. So if you guys have any questions throughout this process, feel free to reach out to me through the chat in the comments below. Let me know if there's something you're getting stuck on or anything like that. I'm going to try to dive into recording and mic positions now, and then after that we're going to go into like editing. I'll show you guys some different processing techniques. There's a couple of different approaches. I'm going to try to anyway. I have an open session here that we can kind of use as an example, but for the time being, what we're listening to, let me walk you through my chain really quick. In fact, let me do this. I would rather, because everything's kind of out of the way and I've only got my webcam at the time. Let me go ahead and screen share, and let's show you guys what I am working with here. And if I can find my keyboard. home position. There we go. So I am going through a 4710D. This is by Universal Audio. So this is actually a pretty high quality preamp. And the way that I have it set up here is my mic is running into channel 1. And if you can tell, there's 4 different inputs. So I'll just blow this up full screen so you guys can see. And on the left side, think of this as like as you're going through from left to right, top to bottom, left to right. You phantom power, which I do need for the Rode NTG3 and the Audio-Technica. If you're just using a dynamic mic, you don't need phantom power. However, stuff like the Germanium Pre, which is an add-on here, requires phantom power because it needs to power the circuitry to be able to do the gain lift. And you want a gain lift for something like this because it's a low output microphone, meaning it doesn't put out a very powerful signal. It's not a very sensitive mic. So this can actually be a better choice for you guys if you don't have the best recording environment. So obviously, I don't know if you can tell, but there is a lot of background noise. I mean, obviously the dogs are barking, but you can probably hear my fans in my PC spinning, background noise from outside, like maybe it's just wind and things like that. These are very sensitive mics. By the time you've put the gain up, and I've put it up quite a bit, so you can tell you hear that background noise. Now there are ways to get around that if you just don't have the room. Like for example, when I was recording at my old studio, I would record in a separate room. So I would have this set up here, like a control room, and then I would be able to pipe, just run a long microphone cable or whatever I need to do, and then headphones. I actually bought, a digital snake, or a little snake, sorry, it's all analog. And I would basically have a copy of the headphone mix that I was hearing in the control room, and the mic would be attached. Both of those would have their own snake output, and I would just run it from the back of my interface to where I needed it to run to in the other room. It's a 50-foot cable. You can get a 25-foot run. There's different lengths. But that would help me, and that was the biggest change in my sound quality that I was noticing, just by being able to separate myself from the control room, reduce all the noise. But let's say you don't have that. Let's say you've just got this room, you're next to your PC, right? Maybe you can separate yourself a little bit. You want to stand up. There's ways that I can show you how to do your vocal production without having to be right in front of the computer to hit record and things like that, or using like a remote control app. So nowadays there's remote control apps for any DAW out there pretty much. There's like Touch DAW for Android and iOS. There's a OSC or OSC, Lemur, things like that you can use to remote control your DAW. In fact, if you're using FL Studio has FL Remote, which is another pretty cool app to be able to remote control your app from your phone or tablet device, whatever have you. So there's a lot of cool things to do under the hood that we can, kind of work with the limited situation that we have. The biggest thing that I want you guys to focus on is no matter what mic we're using, it's all about the microphone position. So you notice the closer I get, sorry, you guys can see me. So the closer I get to the mic, obviously, the more intimate the vocal, and we hear more lip smacking and things like that. And if we're on axis, meaning I'm pointing my face, my mouth is projecting right into the diaphragm of the microphone, it sounds different. It sounds more present, more full, and you notice there's more bottom end. Now I'm going to do something really quick. Let me show you guys. I just turned off the low cut on my preamp. So if I go back to screen share, you can see right here, all the filter, there's all kinds of switches on this guy, right? So I have my phantom power on. I don't have a pad on, meaning like it's going to turn it down by 15 dB if I have this on. And then you can switch between mic and line input. So if you want to record a different source, let's say you want to hook up, output off of like your phone or something like that, and you can have it run through the pre if you want to. You can choose a line level source versus a microphone source. That's what that's for. And then notice here it says low cut and off. So right now I have it off and I'm talking directly into the microphone. You can tell as soon as I get off axis, I start to lose a little bit of that top end and clarity. So depending on where you put the mic and you want to control that level of plosive, you notice that P, that pop. I want to control that. I don't want to have that impede, because certain mics are very sensitive to that and you can end up with distortion right at the microphone, and you don't want that. Usually that's not right in the diaphragm. It's probably in the electronics. But you have to be very careful of the diaphragms too, because they're very sensitive, especially cardioid condensers like this, which is just a straight thin foil piece of metal, and that reacts to an electrically charged field to a backplate. And as that pressure changes, move that tiny little foil, you can actually blow that foil right out, depending on how sensitive the mics are, because that foil is so thin. It's like way thinner than paper. So you want to be careful with that. You don't want to be, really rugged with these mics. They're meant to be sensitive so you can have a really crisp, clean recording and also have that bass, right? So I'm going to put that filter back on. So this is with the low cut on, and this is with it off. So you definitely have more bass presence in the vocal. So the other thing that's happening here is this is kind of giving me sort of a natural presence, a natural level of compression because of the way that the NTG3 microphone is set up. The off-axis rejection. So if you notice, it's pretty long, right? So if we're looking at it here, let me just remove that cover for you guys to see. So now you guys can see this. Oh, it's even crisper. But you notice if I talk into the mic really softly, it already sounds crazy. And if I blow into the mic, I'm sorry, but that's pretty crazy. Now you might have noticed I've got compression on. That's correct. Let me hit that again. You hear that fade back in? Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me a little better. That's already helping. This pop filter helps so much. This is crazy. Things like that, you just want to be mindful of. So even just listening to me speak, you can probably get a good idea from how close I am to the microphone. As we back off, it definitely gives you a more natural sound. Now, different mic placement techniques. Let's say, for example, I'm doing more of a rap vocal. I find that if I give them the freedom, and I work with quite a few vocalists in my day, I like to keep the mic a little above eye level. If you want a more natural sounding vocal, something like Sage Francis or, Beeple and those guys, their recordings tend to sound a little more natural than other artists that might be more mainstream. I can guarantee you they're still in controlled recording environments. However, even just putting it up above level, I still get that natural sound, right? Just backing off a little bit. Now, I'm in a pretty square room, and unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of furniture to, kill the reverb. So as I move away, you can start to hear there's a lot more room noise. So this is what you want to be aware of. As you get closer to the mic, there's that balance between what's direct. You can hear my voice loud and clear. It doesn't really hear bouncing around the room. But as I move away, it does sound more natural, right? So this might be the way I sound if you were like sitting right next to me in the room and I was talking to you, or turning off the low cut, and now I've got that bass back, right? However, keep in mind that relationship opens up the sound of the environment too. So depending on the size of your room, you may want to be closer and then turn down the gain on your mic. Now, I'm riding a compression level pretty heavily, and I have limiting enabled on this preamp. So if you notice, I go back to screen share here, and we see things like slow, off, fast. And just looking at the way things are set up, right, from top to bottom and then left to right, gain is the input level, and then level is the output from the preamp into your interface. So I am running this guy into optical or ADAT light pipe, so it's actually using the digital outs. And then I set the sample rate to go out there. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. My apologies, I'm home alone with the dogs. They love to bark at everything. It's crazy. So again, back to if you're looking at this guy here, I'm using the digital outputs, and then I'm just matching my sample rate with my interface. I'm basically using this guy. This is my master, meaning the sample rate and how the digital signal is being clocked is handled by this 4710D microphone preamp, and then my interface is the slave. Now the reason for that is because this is the one I want to control the audio source from. And I find that the clock being handled internally is better than getting a clock signal from an external device, which introduces another opportunity for jitter, which can give you some distortion effects that just make it sound less crisp. So, as you can see here, I set my sample rate, and then at this very right side, you can tell the bit depth, 24-bit or 16-bit, and then there's this bottom switch. It says limit 1 through 8. Because it's an 8-channel device, you basically get to choose on or off on the limiter for all channels. So I have it on just to protect for the overs. If there's any potential that if I were driving that signal hotter than the digital converters can handle, it's going to be limited in analog first, which is preferable because that's going to keep the signal from overloading the converter and getting nasty distortion. So in this way, you might still be getting distortion, but it's analog. It sounds a little more pleasant. It sounds less harsh on the ears. So that's basically what I want to show you guys here. I can A/B between these two. In fact, I am going to screen share because right now I'm using an RME Fireface 800. So unfortunately they don't have those. Let me see if I can. Sorry guys, bear with me one moment here. Let me go screen share just so you guys can see what I'm doing. So let's just take a look at what the Fireface 800 looks like. Where are you? There you are. Can I just see the image? Okay, so I have the preamp running through these ADAT inputs. So basically my preamp is handling the digital conversion. However, there's also mic inputs right here in the front of the interface. So I'm going to show you the difference between the preamp that I'm using and the interface's own preamps. There's a big difference between those two. So give me one moment and let's open up Total Mix software here. And right now I am using channel 9. Where are you? So we need to enable phantom power there. And you notice now I popped up with signal in analog 9. Perfect. And I have limiter enabled for all of these. Well, I guess that's instrument options only. You can turn that off. Okay, so let me swap between the two. Hello? Interesting. Much quieter. Let me turn that up. Oh, that poor thing. It's been a while since I've used it. So now I am just going straight into the Audio Technica. And the Audio Technica, there we go. Sorry, move this guy out of the way a little bit. There we go. So now I'm talking directly into the Audio Technica, right through the interface. You notice there is a big difference between the two, right? The tonal quality is a little bit different. This is a little less bassy, a little more crisp on the top end. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds pretty good. But there are also features on this mic that this mic doesn't have. And this mic has a roll-off filter on its own and a pad built in. Sorry, that loud click. Okay, and this is with the the roll-off filter, the low cut on. And it's already just even less bassy. It was already less bassy to begin with. And And now with it back on, it suddenly sounds a lot nicer. So let's just kind of A/B between these two. I think we can do that, right? Let's see how well we can do that. So this is the Audio Technica. And this is the Rode. And if you guys want a comparison, I can try and switch the mics interfaces really quick. And give me one moment while I do that. Okay, so now this is the Rode NTG3 right into the interface. And then if we swap between those, this one is the Audio Technica right through the preamp. And notice this one definitely has some compression. It does sound more open, it doesn't sound as compressed going in as this guy does. This guy has a natural compression just because of the rejection pattern that's going on here. Just sounds more present overall. So again, this is the Rode, and this one is the Audio Technica through the preamp. I like the Rode through the preamp, just sounds great. I like the fact that I can bake compression going into the interface, so I don't have to do that in processing. I don't have to do as much processing. Now, I'm kind of overdoing it for this stream to give you guys just a good level coming in, whereas I would back off on the compression that I'm doing in the preamp so that I have room to go into our recording. So let's go to that next stage here. Let me just turn these back. Hey, knock it off! Okay, so now we're back to this guy here, right? Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. There we go. Let me move this guy out of the way. And I will do one more test. I just want to hear what this guy sounds like with the preamp. Hello, testing 1, 2. Okay, so now let me just A/B with this guy here. This guy sounds pretty decent, right? And it's definitely still a little crisper. It's on the crispier side. But if you notice, if I get off axis just a little bit, or as I get away from the mic, this definitely opens up some opportunities. So this is the level you can have to work with. Let me just take this preamp off. Now, hello. So now, you hear how much quieter it is? I can push a lot of level into this guy. I'm talking really loud into the mic, but you notice it's not that loud. This is without that preamp. So this is just the mic going straight into my RME interface. This is the level you can probably expect to see on this. Now the problem with this is, if I want to boost it, there really are no options to boost it any further in the analog domain unless you go with something like this. So this is the problem that we run into for cheaper mics that are dynamic. However, if you're a loudspeaker, a loud vocalist, and you want something to have that flexibility to not overload right at the mic, keep in mind, if I'm putting enough level pressure right in the mic, you notice it still clips. It's still P's are going over, right? But it sounds a lot. It still sounds workable. I'll show you guys how to work with stuff like this and still get a good quality vocal on the next step. So let me switch back. So now, this is with, yeah, I'm barely up halfway on the gain, whereas I had to turn it. I cranked all the way to max on my interface just without, you know, just the mic going into the interface. Now with this pre, I have to enable phantom power again to power the electronics, but now I'm getting that gain lift, so I'm barely up halfway, and I'm already getting a much hotter signal. It sounds great too. Kind of adds a little bit of color. Now this is a totally different preamp than what's in my 4710D. The 4710D, I was driving with tubes, and you can pick between tube and solid state. It's really cool. So, let's just go back to this guy so I don't have to hold the mic. Anyway, hopefully that helps you guys out with hearing the differences in microphones that will get you the quality of recording you want. This is the best thing to think about first, is the performance. I want you guys to think about the performance before everything else. So, if you think about the performance, moving forward, it becomes a lot easier to dial in. I'm a fan of committing to the sound on the way in. So, if I'm looking at my DAW here, I'm going to show you guys a project. This is a Firefly from my collab profile, Pollux and Caster. And let's open up all the way to, let's see here. So you notice I've got several track folders, and basically what I'm doing is I have a vocal recording, right? So this is a track just for my vocal recordings. And you'll notice I have take lanes. So you guys can treat this like multiple tracks. And the cool thing with Cakewalk here, and this is a free software by the way, is that you can do multiple takes, and then through these so-called comp lanes or take lanes, what you can do is if I highlight a certain area, and if you notice my cursor changes, right, as I'm hovering over certain things, this lets you quickly iterate between takes. So if I grab here, you notice it auto highlights and now this one's active. If I do the same over here, I like this part better. That's pretty cool. I love the fact that these tools for comping together, meaning going and compiling different edits across all of these takes, are so simple. Now, depending on the DAW you're working in, you may not have this quick of a time for vocal editing, but you may want to end up doing multiple tracks just like I'm doing here. I would do one track per verse. So I would have a track for verse 1, a track for a hook, or a track for verse 2, etc., etc. And then what I would do is I would route the outputs of those to a new track, or in FL Studio that's just, you know, an auxiliary send, right? So in Ableton, there's a way to route them to a return track, and that return track you can put all your processing on. What I'm going to show you guys here, now that we've kind of lightly touched on the editing, let me play something for you guys so you can hear with and without the effects. So I'm just going to solo the vocals, right? Let's hear what the vocals sound like.
Don't drop through space and time to gaze your rising face. Amazed to find the place where God defined His grace divine. Off this earth, I'm off to search across the verse to find all that lies between you and me.
That sounds pretty crazy, right? So, by the way, let me check and see if you guys have any questions before I go too far ahead. Looks like we are good. What's up, Israel? Hopefully you're catching this, man. So, all right. There's a lot to unpack here because I'm doing a pretty advanced setup. This is something I've been honing for, you know, years and years now. The way that I attack vocals, that I prefer to attack vocals, is this method. So I will have, again, one track per, you know, like part of the song. And the reason is maybe you want to go back and retake parts. You might find that your vocal level, like your performance style, Your mic positioning isn't quite the same, the exact same every time. So you might have to do things individually for each of those takes to kind of gel them together. It's pretty advanced stuff. But for right now, I want to focus on the performance. So you notice I had notes here from all of our takes, like lingering face over gap. You know, it's talking about a lyrical passage within that verse here. Checking for static, has probably noticed some line noise. And take 5 was my favorite. Now you notice this is we just used the whole thing, right? But if I want to go in, let's say I want to zoom in here, and let's make this a little easier to see. I like to do this just so I can see the waveform and ignore a lot of the transients, because that's not accurate. I'm just trying to see the block of the vocal sample. So let me turn off all the effects. And now let's listen to it dry. This is just how it sounds on the way in.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, fly and drum of the angel. Drop through space and time to gaze your rising face.
And now with the effects on.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, fly and drum of the angel. Drop through.
That's intense. Let's hear it in the mix.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, fly and drum of the angel. Drop through space and time to gaze your rising face. Amazed to find the place where God defined His grace divine. Off this earth, I'm off to search across the verse to find all that lies between you and me. Cross the great divide, should I fail to find you out in space between its edges. I'll fly till the universe ends, then take another step.
Very cool. Hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of the drastic change that you can do by sculpting your mix. And I'm going to show you guys how this process works. So the very first thing that I'm doing is when I'm tracking, I try to give them a basic sense of what the final sound is going to sound like. I don't have a lot of this stuff here. Like, you notice I have waves, the NLS, I've got D-breath on, I've got ozone, which normally is like mastering grade stuff, but this is just, you know, the dynamic EQ. I wanted to tame some certain things before it hit the rest of the chain. All that I did after the recording, because a lot of these things add delay, they add, you know, they extend the buffer size. So you tend to, like, you can't get that, all that stuff processing wise in real time. It's too much of a delay to track. However, even with those things off, let me bypass that. There we go.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, fly and drum of the angel. Drop through space and time to gaze your rising face. Amazed to find the place where God defined His grace divine. Off this earth, I'm off to search across the verse to find all that lies between you and me. Cross the great divide, should I fail to find you out in space between its edges. I'll fly till the universe ends, then take another step.
So I'm just doing some subtle tonal control to feed the rest of the chain. But basically, everything that you heard with that off is exactly what Steven, or Caster, got to hear on the way in. Let me move that a little bit. There we go. So let me walk you guys through what this signal flow looks like. So as we go through our tracks, let's say this one is the one we recorded to, right? Well, that one's outputting to all 5 of these here. These are, notice, Vox Comp 1, Vox Comp 2, Comp 3, Comp 4, Comp 5. And the output levels, if you guys can see down here as I highlight them, you know, let me pull up the mixer window so you guys can see. I gotta memorize it's been a while since I've done console view, alt 2, that's right. Okay, so let's pop this guy out here. So again, stop me if you guys have any questions. I will definitely try to answer them as quickly as I can. And let me just show you. Scroll all the way over to Vox Comp. And you notice the levels. So here is our vocal track. This one has the recording on it. And it says output is going to verse Vox. And then you notice all these say verse Vox left mono. And that's true for all of these. So basically, it might be outputting a stereo signal, but I'm only working in mono anyway, so I'm just grabbing, there's no stereo information that's unique to the left and right signal. I only need mono, so I'm just using the left. That's just the way I decided to route it. But there is no audible difference if you were to pick left or right. They're all the same. So in a mono track, where these are being retuned to, so basically this is getting a duplicate copy of what verse vox is outputting. So this channel here, this guy here, is outputting 5 copies basically. These are all returning them, and then they're applying their processing from top to bottom. So if you guys aren't that familiar with mixing workflows, think of signal like a waterfall. It always cascades from top to bottom. And that's true of everything until you start doing routing through, like, you know, auxiliary sends or things like that, because now you can go from left to right or right to left. But from the most part, think of it from top to bottom. And if we look here at where it says gain, this is the input gain for this channel. Now, if you were doing things like, let's say, for example, this track, this clip right here, let's say the clip had, let's go in and clip automation, and we did some gain, like, you know, maybe this is, and you notice the waveform changes, right? In response to what we did.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, flying.
We don't need that, but you can see how the clip gain comes first. So that's affecting everything downstream. And basically you have to learn some of these nuances as you start producing and recording yourself more. But this is basically the structure. It goes from clip gain to the channel, and then from the channel to the plugin effects bin. And then from there, you're just kind of walking down. Now you can do things like, for example, this might allow you to flop. So if you notice it says pre or post effects rack, that's referring to the Pro Channel modules. So if I bust out the Pro Channel modules, you notice I don't have anything here, but I can add all sorts of modules that are built into Cakewalk, for example. So think of this like your custom channel strip as part of the mixing, you know, the mixer bus. And each track might have its own modules, but I can choose that pre or post. And then you go down to effects, and that's your effects bin. These are all the plugins, so VSTs. Because I'm working in Cakewalk, that's pretty much all you're working with are VSTs. And then your sends will happen after. Now, the other thing you can do is, let's say, for example, wait, where was I? There we go. Okay, sorry, back on track. Now that you have an idea of the signal flow from top to bottom, you know, our pan and then our final output volume of the track here, then we get to this, where do we want to send the signal? And that, you know, obviously we were recording through a certain input. We were using from my Fireface, you know, 8.3, which was where the mic was hooked up when we recorded this track. The verse vox is my output, but you'll notice it says verse vox. Now this whole section here are patch points. So basically I'm just saying, I created a patch point called verse vox, and there's basically going to send it and allow me to return that signal to another tracks. So each of these tracks is an auxiliary return track where all those inputs are set to verse vox left. So that's basically saying I'm getting a duplicate copy here. Now, as I walk through these here, you notice I have the NLS. So it's kind of like a console. I'm trying to get that console character and saturation. And a drive is being controlled by my Vox group rather than on each individual plugin. And then you'll notice way up here on my master bus, this one is my mix bus controller. So this guy is controlling all my groups. And you'll notice I've already labeled them drums, bass, synth, piano, guitar. Vox is group 6, and I can control those things individually, which is pretty cool. Every one of those Vox comp auxiliary tracks has that NLS, which is the channel, and then it has its own processor. So I'm going to walk you guys through this. This is basically my version of Michael Brower's multi-compression technique. Now, this guy has been mixing since the 80s, or he was, you know, learning from his mentors when he was in studios. But basically, his approach is to apply compression across a group of buses rather than trying to just have one master bus that you're putting a compressor and limiter on and trying to cram all of that dynamic range, all of the different types of content that are hitting those into one and just expecting it to do the job. So what I'm trying to do here with the vocal is subtly raise the volume. So let me play the track. I'm gonna open these up, right? Let me just close this here so you can see what they're doing. And I'm gonna show you the waveform. And then we'll look at the metering here on the left. So I'm going to try to line them up so you guys can see everything on the screen at the same time, but we may not get to see all of them. Okay. So with those selected,
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, flying drum of the angel. Drop through space and time to gaze your rising face.
so you notice some guys like this one, you don't even see working. And then this guy, he was barely moving the dial. Some of them were jumping depending on this, like some of these loudest peaks here, they're definitely squashing those. But overall, there's not a whole lot of high compression amounts. Like we're talking very subtle amounts of compression. Now things like the Pug Child, the CLA2A, the CLA76, the amount of compression will vary. Now, obviously, I have the CLA76 set strictly to 4:1, but you could go all, and all buttons in means that it will vary the amount of compression being applied depending on the amount the signal goes over the threshold. So as it pushes way up, it starts to apply a higher amount of compression. So there's those little nuances, right? Basically, I want you guys to experiment with this approach rather than trying to match these particular presets, because it's not about the presets, it's not about the particulars, it's about trying to find out what works for your voice. I have played and experimented with this chain on Steven's voice for years, so it took us a while to settle on something that sounds great. And even then, from song to song, I will do different things to massage it so that he has that perfect balance of where you can understand, every lyric that he's singing, but also have that presence of his voice, that, that character, tonal vibe that's going on with it. And so each one of these is applying a certain amount of compression, just raising the overall level. And then I'm gonna walk you guys through the next step. So here, let me apply this, let me turn that off. So now we can just listen to the output of what he's hearing live. This is exactly what he's hearing live.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, flying drum of the angel. Drop through space.
Pretty cool. Let me turn this back on. Let me turn this back on. And this is mix.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of wings, flying drum of the angel. Drop through space and time to gaze your rising face. Amazed to find...
That's a huge difference. And the biggest reason for that is I picked these plugins because they actually run pretty well in low latency, meaning if I want to track with this live, I can have this template set up without this on. So I'm going to turn those off. And without this on, let me play that back really quick.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the...
That's basically what he's hearing live in his headphones in real time. There is no delay. There's no perceptible delay. And that's the nice thing about this setup is I can record and give him that level, that signal, and he can hear the character. He can hear all of the nuances of his performance and hear the lip smacking, things like that. So he can tailor his approach, his persona. You can tailor your performance however you want and practice here. You have to hear yourself through that to get an idea of what the final result is going to sound like. And that commercial studios do this all the time. That's why they are set up the way they are. And a lot of times they prefer hardware because there is no delay. It's instantaneous. It goes like that. Now, obviously, we don't have the footprint for that, nor do we have the budget for that, but you don't need it because obviously in software we can achieve that right here, right now, and bam, we're done. So this is my approach. There's another way that you can do this, but I feel like we're kind of running out of time for that. Let me dive in and let's show you guys another approach. How would I do that? Oops. Don't need that. So instead of this multi, 5-way compressor approach, and then it's feeding all of these final. So actually, sorry, I kind of left that out for you guys. I didn't mean to do that. My final mix chain. So this is in post after we're done recording everything. We're happy with the way everything sounds. I wanted to go in and fine tune the mix. Now this is to make things stand out for this particular track. And if you notice, there wasn't a whole lot of bottom end during the verse. And that's because I actually dropped out some of the sub level in the kick and the bass to give room for things to kind of accentuate the fact that this is a verse. It's not meant to be all bombastic and bassy and everything like that. We wanted to focus on the vocal, and the vocal wanted to be heard. So I'm doing some subtle things that were just specific for this song. So you notice the very first thing, again, we're throwing even more, harmonic saturation with the NLS channel, and then we're going into Pro MB. So if I play that for you guys.
Fingers placed across your waist, tracing shapes, constellation, cross the space between the tips of...
So that's going into Alloy, and Alloy has the equalizer, and there's another curve that's kind of affecting the tone, and then 2-stage dynamics. So these are both compressors. So, and the compressors are still pretty light. This is 2-to-1. This is 2-to-1. The de-esser just kind of helping, de-harshen that a little bit. So I'm doing the most right between 5 and 15K for this band here too. This is doing the most compression as well because it's very sibilant, right? We want to control it. We just want that presence to be a little bit more character. And then I'm going to bring that back in, but more of a tube character to it. So this is where I'm boosting, about 4 dB of the highs, right about 10K back in. And I feel like this is just more tamed. It's more controlled rather than having those huge peaks that I have to try to de-ess after the fact. And then a little bit of micro shift to give some stereo width to it. And this is where out from here, you'll notice I have, it's being sent to Vox stem, which is a bus rather than a track. And then if I show you where that's at, where is that? And probably the very top one. There we are. So Vox stem here. There we are. And I've got a little bit more control going on. This guy's giving a little bit of character for glue. And then Vox Angos Band just to see what I was working with because I wanted to send 2 copies of it. And you notice it says send old rap and send DMG audio compressor. Where is this track headed to? To the top sense. So basically I am ducking the top sense by sending a sidechain signal of the vocal to them. So that's pretty cool. That helped me help the since I want them to be in the background, allow the vocal to kind of like overshadow them a little bit. So from here, if you look further down, I have my effects, right? Oh wait, maybe it was a track. I think it was a track. Yep, Aux returns. So there's our wrap delay or post delay. And basically the wrap delay is feeding into, so basically this guy outputs what it's doing with Waves H delay into post delay with Timeless 2. So there's 2-stage delays that are going on. And if we just listen to these two.
Amazed to find the place where God defined His grace divine. Off this earth, I'm off to search across the verse to find all the... Find you out in space between it.
So I had keyed in and automated certain things about the track. That way his vocal had certain words emphasized, which is pretty cool. That's what we were looking for, and I think it worked out pretty good. So obviously there's a lot that we kind of covered here today. This has kind of been a crash course. I know there's a lot to go over, but there's something we can go in and we can do a deep dive a lot further. If you guys want coaching one-on-one, I'm part of the Music Producers Alliance. And that is a mentorship community. So let me open that up for you guys can see. Hopefully you guys can see. There we go. Oh, of course. Nope. Sorry for the screen share oddness. There we are. Close that. And let's go to Music Producers Alliance. There we are. Okay. So Music Producers Alliance, if you guys aren't aware, this is a great community that I've been helping, as a mentor for a while now. There's over a dozen of us mentors. This was founded by Adam Reistek, of Technophonic. He runs a label, basically. Technophonic has over 300 releases. They've, charted in Beatport Top 100. It's growing like crazy. In fact, I think we have over 4,000 members. We might even be at 5,000 by now in the community. We are just growing like wildfire. It's crazy. Anyway, there's all sorts of mentors in the group. Besides myself, I am more of a mastering engineer. This is what I focus on lately, although I can show you guys my vocal production, mixing production. I've helped other artists with that as well. My collab profile is Pollux and Castor, so the track that I played was one of our debut tracks. But there are guys out here like Zach, for example, a Grammy-winning music producer, recording engineer, and mixer. So he's based out of Nashville. There are people like Nina, who's great for DJing, music production, songwriting. LJ, dude, this guy is killing it. Fellow drum and bass head. I love Noisia. We seem to hit it off with Noisia. He's got some great DJing stuff. He knows music production, distribution really well. Robert Coster, this guy is a crazy mastermind with Max for Live. So Max for Live devices, if you guys are running Ableton Live, this is the guy to hit up. If you want help doing what I'm doing here, maybe he can show you guys some crazy ways to implement Max for Live devices and get a chain like this set up. And then Vardy, he's an amazing, mixing, mastering engineer. This guy has a ton of credits, definitely worth checking out as well. So if you're looking for somebody who can kind of teach you on the engineering stuff, more maybe on mixing, then I can teach you because I'm focused more on mastering. Avery, same as well. There's a lot of us DJs. I would even say hit up guys like Tyler, who are king of like artist development. So if you need help figuring out your artist branding, he might be the guy for you. You never know. Reach out to us. It's all about building the relationship and finding the mentor that will help you get to the next level, because there's practice and you can practice in a bubble all day long, right? And then there's corrected practice, which means that's how you get that correction is going to show you how to get to the result that you want a lot faster than if you're trying to do it on your own. I know I have blind spots. We all have blind spots. I've been there myself. There were engineering stages. I ran a full service, audio post facility for years. And I started doing it full time for a good 4-year stint before my connection, my one and only connection to a lot of commercial work, dried up because their production company went belly up. And I didn't have any other leads because they were my only lifeline to LA stuff. And lifeline, obviously with LA, that's the place to be for those kinds of connections. And production work wasn't coming in anywhere else. I didn't have any other network connections to bounce off of to start, filling the gaps that they were feeding me. And so I had to rethink my business. I ended up moving. I'm basically starting all over from scratch, but now I'm doing mastering for electronic artists here in MPA, coaching and mentoring people on production jobs, especially with, emphasizing how to get your mix ready for mastering. That is my goal. So if you guys need help with that, feel free to reach out to me. If you guys want to just check out some cool chains, let's say you're working Ableton Live or you're actually working in Cakewalk like myself. If you go to my shop right now, I have them available for free. There's two. There's a preset for my mastering chain. This is my signature chain that I've been developing for quite a while. And this is just using all the stock plugins in Cakewalk by Bandlab. But I also have a version that I built with Ableton devices. And this is the Ableton 10 Suite, by the way. Definitely worth checking out. So the other thing, if you guys are going to my shop, and you download it, it's free right now. You just have to name your price, just put 0, add to cart, you're good to go. It'll give you the download link. But the other thing is, look below to the description. I have YouTube walkthroughs of these and how to set them up, basically how I'm using them in the same way that I use my actual mastering chain. So that way you guys can, basically run through these processors to get an idea of what your song will sound like with this style of chain. And if that's what you're after, in fact, the mastering chain that I used in Ableton, I was working on a track for a client, and that track is exactly the master process. That whole preset that I applied is the process that I did for his master, and that it turned out great. So there's no reason you can't get commercial quality mastering done in the DAW that you have with the stock plugins. You don't have to go spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars even, like I've done over the years, to build these custom chains. Now, there are a lot of bells and whistles to mine that allow me to do things that maybe the stock plugins don't. That's why I've kind of stuck with my chain over the years. But there's no reason you can't get the same quality of master out of the stock plugins. So that's what these are about. If you guys would like to see more of that in the future, maybe you want one for FL. I've been working on one for FL. There's ones for Logic Pro. I've been working with my buddy who's based on Mac. My other studio partner that I've worked with in the past, he's going to help me build one until I get access to a Mac myself. I would love to dial it in and fine tune it so I can do a walkthrough video as well. So these are things in the works. If you guys want to see that, let me know. I would love to share those guys, those with you. I feel like from now on, they're probably going to be free only for the Music Producers Alliance community rather than just free on my website. These will probably be having price tags coming pretty soon. I want to say September. So now is the time to hop on them, grab them for free while you can, and let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you guys would like to see next. Maybe if you want to see a deep dive, join us on join us on where we are, the producer roundtable. So that's another thing that happens twice weekly, right now it's once a week, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. And by the way, this is only for members of Music Producers Alliance. So you guys have to sign up. I've left left in the description of the live stream here. You can check out the description and there should be a link to do a test drive of the MPA membership. But there's a ton of other benefits too. So you have member directories, so there's a community off of Facebook, by the way, which sucks sometimes because of the way that they change the regulations willy-nilly, and you just kind of have to go with it. So this is a great way to network directly with other artists, engineers, producers, things like that. It's just right through our portal, our member directory. But we also have things like industry talks and master classes, studio hangouts, there's one happening, by the way, with Henry Fong, the man. If you guys want to catch that, I believe that's happening this weekend. You don't want to miss it. Definitely check that out. But also, if you guys are Music Producers Alliance members, you also get discounts off of mentorship and mastering. So any masters that come into the service will come to me, but I can work with you guys one-on-one. My process is always, I'm going to send you guys a critique of your mix and a test master. So basically, I hear your mix before we do anything. I'll give you some critique and feedback just to make sure that your mix is ready for the best sound that you're after. And I want a little bit of detail about your, like what you're after. Give me some reference tracks that you might be listening to, who you love to sound like, or maybe who you imagine that song being stacked next to on like a Spotify playlist or maybe live on stage. How cool would that be to hear a song sandwiched in between these two artists? Or maybe it's two tracks from the same artist. I don't know, pick two. And those references help me give me kind of like a compass or a guide as to where you want your song to land. And I will do the rest, make it sound as good as we possibly can so you're ready for all the out releases, whatever your target release is, whether you want to go on streaming or, hey, I want to be ready for live, we can handle that. I'll give you a free test sample. And from there, if you love it, we're good. You just buy the service and you have the masters and you're good for 30 days. If you need any revision requests, you have that 30-day window to kind of just, let's massage it. Maybe we need to change something, or maybe you want an alternate mix or alternate master of something. I can work out all those details with you. So we're pretty flexible. That's pretty cool. And don't forget, if you're an MPA member, you have discounts off the mastering services as well as the coaching through us. So that's a huge value for, I think right now, if you join, if you're using my affiliate code, they're still offering a $1 trial for 2 weeks. After that, it's like $17 a month. I think we might be increasing the price soon too. So be aware of that. This is the best time to get in as while it's super cheap. Nobody is offering this much stuff for this cheap. So let me just make sure we got some questions in. Anybody have anything for me? Sorry, I see somebody had commented. I think it was John. Auto-tune fixes everything. Yes and no. It doesn't fix performance. So I kind of want to touch on that really quick because you brought up kind of a good point. Let's say, for example, you have an amazing singer who can hit all the notes and everything, but for something just sounds off. Everything isn't really, the vibe isn't working. I would rather have a vocalist or a singer who has that character, and then we can kind of get close to the notes. Doesn't have to be perfect. That's what auto-tune is for. I would rather have the character of the performance, like the emotion behind what you're saying and how you're singing it. Focus on that and then go for the notes. Auto-tune is there to help nudge that line to get it on track, but it can't fix character. It can't fix the emotional weight behind what you're singing, how you're singing it. That's what matters. So take your time when you're doing your vocal performances to just play for it and try and experiment different things. Remember, you don't have to hit it right on the nail. And that's the other thing that me and Steven, when we were working together on our collabs for years, it became an iterative process. We got really comfortable working in the same room together. He would be right behind me writing lyrics as I was building the track. And then within the hour, he would have maybe, 8 lines, a good 16 measures or maybe 8 measures or something like that. It was a good first verse, right? And we would go lay it down. And it was rough. It would always be rough on the first pass. We would probably do like 8 or 10 tries just right there. And he would go back and he would actually scribble out and change some of his lyrics to help him with his vocal delivery. Sometimes he just had too many syllables. He was trying to fit into one line. Notice that little gap there. I had to take a breath. Those are things that a lyricist and a vocalist need to think about. It should be natural. It should be flowing. Give yourself pauses in space. Don't play with trying to pack too many syllables into one space. Now, this is true more for rappers than for singers, but singers who don't really have that practice, that experience of knowing how much air you can hold in your diaphragm and do one long sentence without having to take a break or have to grab a new breath, this is pretty cool. I can go on for a long time, but then I'm out of breath and then I have to take another break. Don't do that to yourself. Learn your pacing for what's natural for you. This is the toughest instrument to learn. This is the toughest instrument to learn. So think about that when you're approaching your vocals. Give yourself time to iron out those details. It's okay to go back and erase lines and redo the way that you're saying it. And you know what? At the end of the day, as long as you get the idea across, your prose, meaning like the words that you're saying, the diction that you're using, how verbose you're being, it doesn't have to be grammatically correct all the time. It helps, but it doesn't have to be. You can start removing things that don't that don't need to be there. If it's too many syllables, get to the point. Make it phrases. Don't say a whole sentence. Do that. There's so many different approaches to it. So this is putting more of my producer hat on. I tend to think in that direction as well when I'm sitting with the artist. So as an engineer, I want to help them get the best version of the song, the best version of what they're doing. And that is where I tend to focus more on. Don't worry about auto-tune until you're just like, oh God, okay, maybe we need a new vocalist, right? Let's work with what we've got. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I appreciate everybody who has tuned in today. And if you have questions or if you want to see more of this stuff, let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next time. And until then, happy productions.